what's going on with this hoodie from 1995?
Oh, no. No, that's when it was established. That's the Cassio Werneck.
I was oh, man, you've been there forever. You've been there before he even started it.
No, I started with Cassio in probably 2003.
How long have you been doing jiu-jitsu for?
22 years. So I started in 2000.
Wow. How'd you get into it?
So I lived in Fresno at the time, and I watched at the time I rented the UFCs back at the Blockbusters, right? Because I was always a martial artist, and so
I love where this is going. Right? This is great.
Right? So my friends and I would go, and I was always into martial arts, and I took karate when the first UFC happened when I was a kid. So I remember people talking about it at the time. And
You're like a karate guy would kill a wrestler. Get the fuck out of here.
No, I was telling them earlier, I remember we didn't have cable, or I didn't watch the pay-per-views at the time, but I just remember guys like around the karate school, like, yeah, this Mexican guy was beating up everybody.
Like, yeah, no one could do anything against him. And you're like, was he real big? Like, no, he was really skinny.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
Mexican.
Right. So I was always interested in martial arts, and then just knowing that, jiu-jitsu was dominating those early days. And so when I was old enough to, like, my friends and I would go to Blockbuster, rent movies, and, there was the UFCs. We'd look them up and bring them home, and watched all the early UFCs back then.
Do you kind of remember the first one you saw? Do you remember like the first?
I don't remember which video, because it depended on what they had at the time. I don't think I even started with one. I think I started with 3, which is actually the one where Gracie got injured before the end.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, but it was still, that was, he fought Chemo in that one and beat Chemo, and then couldn't continue on.
Chemo came out with the cross on his back.
He did. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So yeah, pre-gloves, rounds, pre-time limit. It was something else.
I remember seeing the big, almost like Samoan looking guy. He was huge, and he went against a famous fighter, and the guy was kind of known for like striking and karate and stuff like that. And the guy just sidestepped him and kicked this big Samoan guy in the face, and his tooth went flying. That was the front row. I was like, I'm in. Whatever this is, this seems amazing.
I may be wrong, but I think that's the very first. That was the very first fight in the very first UFC. Okay. You got the video.
Yeah, a little pre-workout fucking cross carry.
Well, and then Hoist used to come out in the Gracie train. You remember the Gracie train? They'd have the entire family would have their hands on, and they'd, he'd have his head down.
You know what's
really?
Yeah, that's how they used to. There's the Gracie train.
You know what's incredible about this is there were some guys that actually did pretty well against him, considering they didn't know what jiu-jitsu was. There was a couple guys. Dan Severn comes to mind, but Dan Severn obviously had such a huge grappling background.
Absolutely,
and Dan Severn weighed like 9 million pounds compared to Hoist Gracie.
Right. Yeah, no, Dan Severn did pretty well.
Oleg Tiktarov, I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, but I don't think they ever fought, did they? I loved Oleg, man. Oleg was one of my favorites in the early days. Another grappler.
I think Oleg and Hoist, I think they fought for like an hour. They had some battles where they were just killing each other, I think. I could be wrong.
I don't think they ever did. I think I remember Oleg. Oleg was a bleeder. He was a grappler, but when he lost, it was usually because he was cut and he was bleeding. So,
what did you end up liking about the sport? What really gravitated you towards jiu-jitsu? Like when you first tried it, was it just so different than other stuff that you tried?
So yeah, we were talking about that earlier too. Well, first off, what attracted me to what Hoist was doing was just the fact that, Hoist was smaller. He was, I think, one of the smallest guys in the first UFCs. And he went in, and you watched the other guys, and it was like they were all martial artists. And I took karate at the time, and I remember, it's like they walked in, and their martial arts went out the window. They just started swinging at each other like they were in a bar fight, right? And I remember thinking, oh man, that's what martial arts look like for real. I don't know. And then Hoist comes in, and you could tell. Even though that wasn't what I was doing at the time, you could tell that is what he trained, right? And not only that, but he took out these guys that were swinging like that, and most of them walked out without a mark on them. Whereas when those two, when two other guys went in, they both walked out, looked like they were lost, right?
Yeah. It made it more clear that it was a skill set and a sport, and not this barbaric thing of like, let's just throw bombs at each other and see who can hurt the other guy more than the other guy.
Right. Yeah. Who can throw harder, who's, yeah.
And also when you manage to nullify someone so efficiently.
Yes.
Right? When you make it actually look almost kind of easy once they touch the ground, that's kind of scary.
Right. It is. And so then that brings me to like kind of what my first experience when I finally got into train was being a martial artist as a kid. And I got into martial arts, I was telling Nsima earlier that my dad and I would sit and watch like Kung Fu theater, black belt theater on TV, watch the old Kung Fu movies. And it was always like the little guy that was, had trained for a long time was beating everyone, right? The little master guy. And he was smaller. It was like, but it was almost magic what he could do, right? And taking karate, it wasn't really like that, right? Because, it was, we weren't really hitting each other. It was more of a point style karate, but it wasn't really like that. And there was always this question, like at the end of a match, especially, like who would have really won if this was a real fight, right?
Yeah.
And so the first time, there was only one jiu-jitsu school. I grew up in Fresno, and there was only one jiu-jitsu school in all of Fresno at the time, and it was taught by blue belts.
That's wild.
Yeah, right? And there wasn't a black belt in the entire city, right?
Yeah.
What gym was that? Who was that at the time?
So I started at Pacific Martial Arts in Fresno, and I trained there for a while. They had at the time, they were a karate school. They had Aikido, they had judo, and then they had a jiu-jitsu class. And so I went in and to try it out, and a buddy of mine, usually go in together. It's hard to go into a place like that by yourself.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it right away, but it was just me and my buddy that very first class, and then the instructor. And Pacific Martial Arts at the time was under Half Gracie.
Oh, okay.
And if you know anything about the early days of U.S. martial art or jiu-jitsu, Half Gracie, he still has a kind of a reputation. And Half Gracie schools had a reputation back then.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Half Gracie schools, it was the only one to go to, but they jiu-jitsu was rough back then, first off. But they had a reputation for even being rougher than others.
So when you say rough, because maybe it was kind of new in the U.S., when you say rough, was it like instructors would purposefully kind of really wreck people to show how useful it was?
Oh, absolutely. I think all jiu-jitsu was like that back then.
If I can butt in for a moment.
Yeah.
So I was, around a similar time, I was stomping around in like the Los Angeles area. And there was a lot of mixed martial arts going on. There was a lot of jiu-jitsu, and people were just getting into jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu was growing. And some of the gyms that I was at had some really high-level people that were doing like UFC, MMA type stuff. What would happen is the people that would like sign up to come into these things, they weren't people that heard about jiu-jitsu through like Joe Rogan.
No.
They weren't people who like heard like, this would be a good idea. This would be great for you to test your mind, body, and spirit.
No, these were people
in
that
this
wanted
fashion.
to fight.
These were people that were bigger than me, that were jacked up, that were juiced up, that usually were bouncers at like bars.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I wanted to, and they wanted to like throw their weight around. And so the instructors were like, yeah, fucking sign up. I'll take your money and I'll fucking beat your ass. And I would see these fights all the time because we both shared the ring. And I'd always watch, and they're like, hey, do you want it? I'm like, no, I don't ever want to do whatever that is. You guys have a real skill. I'm doing this like fake pro wrestling stuff. It was really, it was amazing to watch.
So yeah,
but there was always a battle going on.
Yeah.
Like someone like you would show up who's fucking yoked and be like, yeah, man, I want to try this out. And like the rest of the class would be like, this is going to be great. We're going to get this motherfucker.
Yeah. So yeah, well, we'll get into that in a minute, but yeah, there was, so the first school I went to, me and my buddy showed up, and the instructor was a smaller guy. He was probably like maybe 150, 160, and I was skinnier at the time. I was probably about 190, 200 pounds. He just wrecked me. All right. You know, and it was just him, me, and my buddy. So it was like, he took turns just training with us. And he was actually, even though Half Gracie schools have this reputation of being rough, he was really cool.
Yeah.
And I really liked the instructor there. I didn't end up staying at that school because just the payment structure at the time, it was one of those situations where it was like, I was working and I was barely paying, could afford to go there. So I signed up for the lowest tier, which was like at Cassio's, it's like you can sign up once a week, twice a week, whatever. This place had multiple martial arts. And so you signed up by the hour.
Wow.
So I got 1 hour a week. And the problem was the jiu-jitsu class was a 2-hour long class.
So you had to pay for 2 hours.
No, well, see, I'd go and then like I intended to leave because they're doing the water break.
Yeah.
But the instructor's like, don't go, just hang out, right? The instructors were super cool.
Yeah.
And then the owner of the school, every, once a week or every month or so would come in and make this big announcement. All of you that are paying for 1 hour a week are supposed to be leaving right now.
Yeah.
And the instructor would be like,
Just hide.
just pretend like he's not talking to you.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Was it like inside of a different gym and stuff like that?
It was actually a pretty cool gym. Like they actually had about 3 different mat rooms. So it was like they had like, you'd walk in and there'd be like a mat room here. And then there was a room with a window that was a separate room that had a big mat. And then I think there was one more at the time. And the jiu-jitsu guys would usually come train over here and there'd be a karate class over there. And there'd be an Aikido class or judo class over there. And so you could do all of it, but most of the people that showed up would just pick one martial art and they'd stick with it. So I trained there for about 6 months at 1 day a week. And then a guy moved into town and opened up a new school. And a buddy's like, we should go check this place out. It's a Hoist Gracie affiliate, or actually at the time it was before Hoist Gracie had his own affiliation.
Yeah.
He was still affiliated with Horry and Gracie's, the Gracie Academy, also LA area, that he run and Henner run now, but it was Horian at the time. So he's like, oh yeah, and this guy trained with Hoist Gracie and was training down with him. He was a blue belt too.
Damn, blue belt instructors, that's shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we moved over there and I just liked the atmosphere better, number one. I mean, it was a little bit easier to train there. The other thing is I ended up paying less there and training unlimited.
Yeah.
And so I was there all the time. Like I'd stay after class, be there before class. You had a little back room with the mats and like me and other guys we're all white belts, right? And so, and learning from a blue belt. And so back then, and it was pre-YouTube. So it was like.
You probably thought he was amazing though, right? The blue belt when you came in?
He was good. I think at
the time you probably thought.
He was. I mean, blue belts were like, like, oh, look at that. That guy's a blue belt.
Right.
Like when I moved to Sacramento and I saw a purple belt for the first time, I'm just like, oh, wow.
Mythical purple belt. It's like a rare Pokemon.
Right. Yeah. And so, it was really good. And training with him was great. And like I said, it was just a matter of, I got the mat time. I didn't quite get the same level of instruction that like you'd get going to Cassio's, obviously, where you have multiple black belts on the mat at a time and they can all help you. It was like a lot of what we learned back then was trial and error. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, that guy injured his knee doing that. Don't do it like that anymore. Right. And so there was a lot of that going on back then. It was like, oh, I saw this, pre-YouTube, but they had sites that would have like picture with explanation, like a still book, like
Jesus Christ.
sequential,
thing.
Sequential techniques and stuff, and like, oh, I saw this online. Let's see if we can make it work. And we'd do it until someone would hurt themselves, and then like, okay, maybe we should do this, stop doing that one, and try something else. Or oh, that worked really well. Let's keep,
How long was it until Cassio came to town and you started working?
So that was in Fresno. I lived in Fresno, and I moved around 2002, 2003. I had got my blue belt still when I was in Fresno. I training at that place. Hoist Gracie came in and did seminars.
Yeah.
Basically, in the year and a half that I was there, Hoist Gracie came twice.
Wow.
And what was the name? Is it Holker? I think his brother Holker came once. And the second time Hoist came, he promoted me to blue belt.
Wow.
And that was pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. It must have been nice to be Hoist Gracie back in those days, because when he came in, the place was packed at $70 a student.
Yeah.
And basically he got 100% of the proceeds from the seminars. And the first time he came in, he did 3 seminars, 3-hour seminars at $70 a pop. And I think there was at least 60 or 70 people in each one.
Yeah.
Imagine if he did one now.
Right, I know, right?
I mean, it would be crazy. You'd need like a stadium, right?
That'd be fucking wild. Power Project family, how's it going? You guys probably have watched a lot of Mark's lifting videos and some of my lifting videos, and you've probably noticed that our shorts never go past our knees.
Nope.
There's a reason for that. Y'all got to show those quads off, baby. And the shorts that we're always wearing are from a company called Vuori. That's spelled V-U-O-R-I. But Vuori has amazing clothes for the gym that we wear, but also outside the gym. So you can wear them to dinner parties, dates, gatherings, all that good stuff. But all their clothes fit well, fit amazing. This is a shirt from Vuori, by the way. Look at that shoulder. It's a just look at this. Look at it fits so well for people in fitness. And even if you're not, just check them out. Andrew, how did they get it?
Yeah, clothes that look good inside and outside of the gym and work just as well inside and outside of the gym. Head over to vuori.com/powerproject. That's VUORI.com/powerproject to receive 20% off your first order. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
You know what's interesting? When I was a kid, even when I was like a teenager, when you'd see people who did martial arts, martial arts was cool, but then there was also a side where it's you may have this belt or whatever, but that's not going to actually work.
Right.
Right. And it was interesting. For example, when I went into Cassio school, it was 7 years ago, with my first days rolling, I was 265 at the time.
Right.
And this black belt, that was 155.
Is it the Nate?
Nate.
Yeah, you have that video online. I've seen that. Nate is a monster, though, for his size. He really is. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Nate is, yeah.
But that's why I was like, oh shit, this is actually effective stuff. It's not just, it doesn't just look like fighting.
No.
You literally, there's nothing you can do. Despite how strong you are, there's nothing you can do if you don't have the skill. You can't strength your way out of that shit.
No.
And that's when I was like, oh God, there's really something cool here. You know?
Absolutely.
It's leverage and technique, but your strength and size can matter to a certain degree, right?
Oh, it absolutely does. It absolutely does matter. I mean, it's like any leverage. I mean, right? The amount of force that you use on the lever is just going to be multiplied. So strength does matter. I mean, yeah.
For you, is it helpful, do you think, to fight people that are bigger or smaller, or
as a bigger guy? Yeah.
I like both.
What's easier for you to kill?
I'm probably the guy that you want to roll with first, because I'm nicer to those smaller guys, and I tend to try to. I mean, Nsima coming up through the ranks too. It's like being one of the bigger upper belts. I always felt like it was my responsibility to go with the big guys too.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate that.
Because,
man.
I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, just being big, it's hard to come into a martial art as a bigger guy, especially jiu-jitsu, because if you don't know what you're doing and you do something crazy, the kind of damage you can do as a bigger guy doing something random is way more than, so people tend to avoid those guys a lot.
People love to kick your ass too, probably, right? There's probably some element of that when you first walk in.
Yeah. I mean, well,
yes. I can say confidently, I remember, yes.
Like, I got this for today. Everybody else relax.
Well, no, but no, also, I mean, when I also say responsibility, I also feel like as a bigger upper belt, it was my responsibility to kind of vet them in a way. To make sure that they're not going to be the kind of guy that does do something crazy and injures one of my other training partners, right?
I like that.
That sounds like an asshole.
That sounds common amongst jiu-jitsu academies, right? Where you're trying to set the tone and teach the guy of like, hey, this is kind of how we act in this place.
Right.
That seems to be really important. What do you think makes jiu-jitsu that way? Because not all sports are that way.
Well, and it wasn't that way in the beginning. And that's, I mean, if we get back to the story of the early stuff, like, no, there was people that would come in and Nsima said, it's like, no, it almost was people's responsibility to show them the power of jiu-jitsu. And just, when I first started at the Half Gracie school, when I first went to a class that had more people, it felt less like I was in a martial arts school and more that I was in a tryout for a sports team, and that they were trying to vet me to make sure that I was tough enough. Like, they were trying to grind me into the mat as hard as they possibly could and see if I came back the next day. That's how that.
I think the places that these the spots that these places were owned, like the people that owned these places, were rough too, from what I remember. I remember in Huntington Beach, I believed it was associated with Huntington Beach bad boy. What's his name doesn't come to mind. The UFC fighter. It'll come to mind.
Was that Tito Ortiz?
Tito Ortiz. There you go. I believe it was like partially owned by him.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out all kinds of weird stuff about that place. Like they shot porn in there and all kinds of things. So these facilities, like they were just doing whatever they could to like keep the lights on. They had like kickboxing classes where they'd have like moms in there, doing the kickboxing shit like that. But they had like tanning beds, and they just were trying to figure out like whatever way we can like use this space and make money with, even if it is porn.
Right.
We're gonna figure that out.
Yeah, the second school, it ended up being a Hoist Gracie affiliate, but they were a karate school first, and I think he opened up the karate school because he liked jiu-jitsu, and he made his money by teaching karate and still was able to teach jiu-jitsu, and that the jiu-jitsu was the secondary thing. Mm-hmm. And so I felt comfortable there. The other school had all the martial arts. That was kind of their thing. It was like a buffet.
Yeah.
You pay for the amount of hours a week, and then you use your hours however you want. But yeah.
Do you guys ever feel like your training is ruined by some new people coming in sometimes? Like, do you kind of get a little frustrated where you're like, I was looking forward to doing X, Y, and Z coming up because the next 6 weeks I got a contest to prep for. And now I got these like 3 people that just came in, and like this guy's like at this level and this other person's down at this other level. So does that ever kind of happen? Like hijack your workouts a little bit?
Not really. I could see if you were really seriously training for Worlds or something like that, that was a thing. But then, and I think that's part of where this idea of like not asking upper belts to roll thing. We don't do that at Cassio's, but
I see.
That gives them the ability to kind of control how they're training. I mean,
yeah.
You show up at different times and stuff too, right? Like maybe the better guys are showing up at specific classes kind of thing?
Well, I haven't been training. I've been teaching. I haven't been training as much. It used to be the 11 a.m. class at Cassio's was the killer's class. And it was mostly because, well, the way I looked at it was these are the people that either rearranged their work schedule to make sure they could make this class, or they were the other people teaching jiu-jitsu at their own schools. Yeah. So it was all the really tough, guys. And it's not to say that the 9-to-5ers that came to the evening classes weren't tough. Some of those guys are ridiculously tough too, but it was, I think the 11 o'clock guys were the guys that were like so focused, like basically their focus was jiu-jitsu and they worked the rest of their lives to focus on that. Whereas the evening jiu-jitsu was, their recreation and whatever.
And that's one thing that's cool about Cassio School, because like there's so many people that come in, but there's so many people to train with that are upper belts, unlike back in the day where you had like, you were probably lucky to have a purple or brown belt, but now there's so many upper belts to train with that like I can choose who I choose to roll with on that day. Yeah. And if somebody does want to, get a roll in and show them some things that's a lower belt, cool. But like there's so many people in there. It's not just like filled with white belts and you have like a few upper belts. You have a lot of upper belts and new people. So you can curate your training to whatever you want.
And I would argue too that new people coming in are an opportunity. If you're not training for like a competition where you have to have that like killer mindset, right? If you're not training your mindset to just like wreck people, new people coming in are an opportunity for you to teach, which again is one of the best ways to learn.
Yeah.
And we don't see that in other sports that often. I mean, it happens, in pro football and things like that. Sometimes they'll keep like a veteran quarterback on the team to help the new rookie guy kind of come up and pass the torch and stuff. But it's just not that common. It's like in other sports, it seems like you don't want the other guy to get that good because take your spot. Why do you think it's so common in jiu-jitsu? Is it just like baked into the culture a bit nowadays? And is it something that just really helps? Like if Nsima, even if he's not the instructor, if he helps me first couple weeks that I go to jiu-jitsu, he's going to end up with maybe accelerated learning is part of the...
Well, I think that's part of it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think teaching people is one of the best ways to accelerate your own learning. But when I started, and we go back to that school, and I would say the average person to come in, and you were getting ground into the mat, would last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then they were gone. Well, that was a potential training partner. Everybody has something to offer, right? And I learn as much from, people learning. Jiu-jitsu is one of those crazy things where there is no one way to do it, right? And so somebody can do something crazy and I can get something out of that.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't work, I can be like, that was actually pretty cool. Mm-hmm.
You're like, put your leg over there. And they put their leg in a completely wrong spot, but then you're like,
wait,
oh, that wasn't that bad.
Right. And that's the thing. And jiu-jitsu, that's another thing about jiu-jitsu that is doesn't fit into like a box. When I did karate, it was like, you have to do this form, and you have to do punches this way and that way. When you learn a technique in jiu-jitsu, you try to do it as close to the way that your instructor teaches you, but then you train.
Yeah.
And it changes. It's like you try to do it that way, and it almost never works the way that you learned it. What happens is I may go for something, and then they do something unexpected. And so I have to, in the moment, change what I'm doing based on what they did. Mm-hmm. Right. And then sometimes they change and it goes back to my technique might have been interrupted and I might still end up with the same technique.
You can't stop the guy and say, hey, I didn't learn it this way.
Right. The old Jim Carrey skit with the knife, right? You're still bending your elbow. That's why it didn't work.
That's great.
But that is one thing that's actually really cool about it and really wild about the way you started, because we were just talking earlier about how jiu-jitsu doesn't make sense year one. At least
it doesn't.
Me. It made no fucking sense, right?
No.
And then certain things started to click, but then it still didn't make sense for a while. But at least I was understanding a little bit after the first year.
Right. It's like magic, right?
It's like magic. But then I imagine back in your day where now you have some people that are just grinding the shit out of you every single day you go in. Things aren't making sense. It's just like, you would almost be like, why the fuck do I want to come back to a place where I'm not understanding this martial art and I'm getting my ass beat? It makes it really tough.
Oh, absolutely. You look at those first generation of American black belts and they're all nuts. Because I like to think that I started and I'm not one of them, but to keep going back for that kind of abuse over and over again, you kind of had to be.
Do you feel kind of mad? Are you do you look at people now, you're like, you all are so soft.
No, I don't have that. No, to me, it's the opposite. I look at it in the sense it's like, damn, I wish I could have started in an era like this, right? Mm-hmm. I wish, and it goes back to I look at these new people coming in as potential training partners, as somebody that's going to eventually give back and challenge me. And even if they don't challenge me, I can still learn with them, right? Uh-huh. It's easier to.
I want to know this, Toby. I'm curious because I've heard stories a little bit here and there. Now I've heard early Cassio, when he came and he was teaching, was it a little bit more hardcore Cassio than?
Oh yeah.
I'm curious about that because I've heard a little bit from Dr. Rabago. I'm like, wow, training was like that.
Oh yeah. So especially when Cassio was competing at adult. Mm-hmm. level.
Yeah.
So when I first started, 2003, 2004, he won the Worlds in 2003. He took silver in 2004.
Yeah.
And then 2005, I would say that it changed because he got injured.
Ooh, okay.
And he got injured. So it used to be, I remember times after class, so he's training and it would be he'd grab anyone that all the toughest guys, right?
Yeah.
and he'd line us up and we'd, rotate in, 2 minutes on and just to go start from wherever and go. And, and I remember times, dude, Cassio's a monster. I like as much as he is now, like back then, I remember after a hard training session, right? All of us, we've been rotating in on Cassio. And I remember we're all sweating and breathing hard. And Cassio at the end lectured us because he said that we didn't like work hard enough. We didn't do enough to make him, he's like, you guys are just letting me get stuff. And we're like, okay, yeah. And Cassio, you've met Cassio? Yeah.
He was
here. That's right. I forgot. I was, But Cassio has this thing, man. And it's like, he's not much older than me, but he has that father figure. Like if he says something, you're just like, oh.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, like if he doesn't, and he doesn't yell. He doesn't. It's just like like I'm disappointed with you.
I could picture you guys kind of like looking at each other and like talking to each other afterwards, and you're like, were you letting him do anything? No, I swear I wasn't letting him do shit. I was trying my hardest. I gave it everything I had.
It's really beat all our asses.
It's so great because he's so kind. He really is. Respectful. I'm sure he's probably always been that way, but it was probably a little different back then. We had that just kind of killer instinct, and you could see in the pictures. Yeah. I mean, he's still in great shape, but you kind of see his neck back then, and just the development of his body. You're like, oh shit, that guy trains a lot. Yeah, Cassio was. Just imagine if other schools worked this way. Imagine if regular school worked this way.
Right, I know.
Someone comes in and the black belt of the class works with the white belt of the class and says, "Hey, man, let me walk you through some of this and show you how it's going to work."
Well, I almost thought, okay, so when I was in high school, I hated homework, right? Mm-hmm. And I was good at math, but I hated the homework, and homework was a big portion of my math score, right? But my instructor saw that and was like, well, if you stay after and tutor other people in math, you don't have to do any more homework. It's like, great. Score. I ended up doing way more homework that way, but still, I mean, I think that there's definitely something to that. Like go back to the one-room schoolhouse days, right? Mm-hmm. The upper students can help the lower students and vice versa. And
that'd be incredible.
And you progress based on the metrics of what you're actually learning, right? Yeah. As opposed to, I'm this age, so I need to move up to the next grade.
How long have you been instructing now? How many years?
Well, so I was telling you earlier, I think it's hard. I don't remember exactly the date I started. I started teaching the kids class at Cassio's when I was a brown belt, and I taught one day a week, and Dan taught the other days.
Yeah.
And
so that's more than 12 years since you've been a black belt for 12 years.
I've been a black belt for 12 years. And so, and then I was a brown belt for 3 years. So I would say probably between 14 and 15 years of.
Haven't figured out how to shoot a fireball yet?
Not yet.
You're probably close. Next 3 years, I think.
The no touch knockout stuff, right?
I love that McDojo shit, bro. Oh my God.
Did
you play other sports when you were growing up?
I tried out for basketball when I was younger, and I just didn't have, I liked basketball recreationally. I didn't really have the drive to be competitive in that way.
Yeah.
I liked my summer vacations too much to go to all the basketball camps that all the people on the team had to go to learn enough to do, to be on the team. So, I mean, that I swam. I wasn't a competitive swimmer, but I was a good swimmer, and I don't know. It wasn't really ever sport specific. It was usually, it was sport, but it was like, I always enjoyed the teaching. I enjoyed the doing, not, the recreational part of it. So,
I think that's a really cool thing though. Like how you've been instructing for 15 years now, but that's not something that you thought you would do when you were a kid. Be a jiu-jitsu instructor,
right?
And be extremely good at it. By the way,
when I graduated high school, I went to UC Santa Barbara for engineering, of all things.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
What has jiu-jitsu done for you, like mentally and things like that? What do you think it's done for you?
It's just, I don't know. I think it helps with just, I think, losing on a regular basis and just learning from it, I think has helped. So mentally, I think it's just one of those things that you learn that you have to put things out there sometimes and fail.
Yeah.
And then figure out where you failed and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And just over
Yeah,
and
in
over.
a very literal sense of somebody choking you out or getting you in a hold that
absolutely.
you can't get out of, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, sometimes it's not your fault at all. They're just too good for you, right? And that happens in life too. So you just have to move on and try to get better.
Yeah, you don't have enough experience yet, but at some point you can learn and you can maybe catch the other guy.
Right. Yeah.
What you got brewing over there, Andrew? I'm sure you got a bunch of questions.
Yeah. It's very general and there's no way to answer it, but like we've been going back and forth and we've done some privates and it's freaking incredible. But like, when does this shit start to make sense? Because, it's funny. I was also talking to Graham, the barefoot sprinter, and it's like, we will do something completely different and still get caught in an arm bar. And then we're like, all right, I'm going to do the exact opposite and just go a totally different direction and get caught in the exact same arm bar. So like, what is is it just as simple as consistency and like going, a couple times a week? Is it doing stuff off the mat as well? Like, when does this shit start to click?
I would say you just before you get your blue belt, you start to really like get it, but you can't do it. Right? It's one of those things. Yeah, it's. I was saying earlier, it's like total immersion language, right? As a white belt, you don't understand what's going on, and really all you're supposed to be taking in is starting to make the sounds of the language, right? So little by little, you're learning a little bit of the movement that's going to be required for technique. You can't even really do the technique right yet. Yeah. You're just learning the little movements, little by little. By blue belt, you're starting to understand what other people are saying, but you can start to make yourself understood with one-word type sentences, but
still can't speak.
But you still can't speak fluently, right?
Yeah.
But you can get understood and you can get things done. And especially if you're going against a white belt, you can make yourself heard, right? Yeah. I think by purple belt, you're starting to put your sentences together. You're starting to put techniques together. You understand way more. So when someone teaches, you get way more out of the instruction.
Oh yeah.
By purple belt level. I think still at blue belt, you miss probably 80% of what your instructor is saying when they teach, and that's okay. Again, total immersion language is not like, it's not structured in the same way as like, learning your verbs and all that. You're just, you're absorbing it, right? And so you get as much out of the instruction as you can. You do things as close to the way as you can understand it.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to be partnered with an upper belt, they can help you. But yeah, I would say that usually blue belt, you understand, you just are not able to, make it.
It's also when most people disappear.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Can you accelerate the process just by being around it a lot? I know like in some other sports, if you really submerge yourself in it and you're, hanging out on the mats a lot and watching a lot of video.
Oh, I mean, it's just like anything else, repetition, right? I learned to play guitar when I was about the same time I started Jiu Jitsu. I started playing guitar, and I wasn't very structured in the way I learned it. I'm a decent guitarist now because I kept doing it, and it's just repetition. Now, if I had structured my training in a way where I, did drills, same thing with Jiu Jitsu, and you drill things and you're very, strategic about what you're working on and when, I probably could have been a much better guitarist a lot faster. But I might have.
You wouldn't have enjoyed that process.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what I was going to say. So I might not have enjoyed it as much. For me, it was just, if I picked up my guitar for a couple minutes every day, I was fine.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a good lesson in there. I think, when you're trying quote unquote, trying something new that you probably shouldn't even really try. Hopefully it's just something that's in your interest level, and hopefully you're just trying to be open-minded to absorbing this new thing. But the harder that you try and the quicker that you try to understand stuff, probably in some ways almost the worst.
In some ways,
might just take you longer.
And that's what I was talking about teaching the kids class. And for me, it's not really about how good they get, how fast. It's more about instilling the love of the sport over time. And if they love it, and they keep coming back and they keep doing, they're going to be good someday.
Yeah.
Right. And I was saying the challenging thing right now is now I have some kids that want to compete. So I have to be a little more technical with them, and I have to find the balance of keeping the class fun for the kids that I want to just keep going, and also giving the challenge for the competitors that they need to grow. But yeah, it's always a balancing thing. I mean, if you want to get really good at jiu-jitsu really fast, you're very strategic. Like, okay, I need, if I teach a private lesson, I tell people to list all the positions they can think of and any techniques they know from each one of those positions. And then how well, if looking at your list, how well do you know those? And if there's any of them that you're not very good at, you need to drill them. Because, I mean, the main thing with jiu-jitsu is you shouldn't have to think about what you're doing, really. People talk about black belts thinking multiple moves ahead, and it's not like that. I don't think about 5 moves ahead. I've just been in that situation so many times that if they do this, I already my body knows what to do at that point.
It's like driving on the freeway.
Right.
And there's a lot of cars and a lot of distractions,
Absolutely.
but you've been doing it enough to where you don't really have to think a lot about it.
Right. And then I mean, having kids, watching them learn to walk when they were kids, right? You don't think about how many intricate physical movements it takes to actually walk and not fall on your face.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to flex your toes at the right time to take a step forward so you don't trip. And you watch the toddlers learn and you're like, you can see it, but jiu-jitsu is like that, right? There's all these small movements, and that's where it's like as a white belt, when you were talking, Andrew, about learning and understanding, at a certain point, you just have to learn the large movements. The details will come every time you fall on your face.
You know what's the interesting thing about watching a kid walk and watching them get their balance? I mean, their head takes up a large portion of their body, right? It's a large percentage of their body weight, and so their head's all wobbly.
Super top heavy.
But they'll start to walk, and then they without even really, you can tell that they weren't thinking about it because now they're in the middle of like the living room, and they'll stop and they'll sit down. Because they're like, whoa, that was too much. You know, and they like pause. Have you ever seen that before, Andrew? Your son ever done that before? Like he'll just be like, whoa, like I got far away from everything. There's nothing to hold on to.
When he's not paying attention, like because he started like walking backwards, and then he would like bump into something and be like, what the fuck? Who put that there? It's like, dog, like that's the wall. It's been there forever.
Yeah, they'll sometimes like walk and they'll kind of hold on to stuff and they'll get their balance. And the next thing you know, because they went for a toy or something, they're like, oh my God, I got all the way over here by myself.
I'm out in the deep end.
And then they just squat down.
And that's where it goes back to having good training partners who can be that, if they're holding onto the couch while they're learning to walk. A good training partner can kind of not wreck you while you're learning to walk.
Yeah.
How about competing? Because you said you had some students that are interested in competing.
Some of the kids, yeah.
For myself, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to compete, but now I am sure I want to.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna know when the fuck is the right time, but
it's never the right time. You just have to do it. I mean, you make it the right time, right? You start training for it. You become focused on it. You
pick a contest and go.
Yeah.
Talk to your instructor first, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to Cassio first.
Before my first...
Or Derek or whoever.
Yeah, Derek Mona. Like, I remember before I wanted to do my first competition, I talked to Cassio about that before, and he was like, I think I was like 6 or 7 months in, and at that point, he's like, yeah, you're good to compete at this point. But yeah, like, your instructor is going to be able to see your trajectory and how you're doing and how much things make sense, because one thing is like, when going into a white belt competition, man, they're all white belts and they're all raring to compete. Oh, yeah. So when you're competing against another white belt who knows, let's just be real, who knows as little as you do, they're going to resort to, if there's a physical motherfucker in there, they're going to be like, I'm off. They'll resort to that. So you at least need to be able to do enough to be able to prove, like, just to be able to be safe.
I was going to say, I actually felt safer in competition when I was a purple belt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I am concerned about that because like I went to a competition not too long ago, and I could see some spazzy white belts, and I'm like, damn, they're competing. Like in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, if they're competing, then they've already had enough experience. But from what I've been told, it's like, well, as soon as the like competition lights are on, like a lot of that stuff goes out the window, and people start spazzing left and right, and like everything they just kind of revert back to like, I just need to survive.
Yep. Yeah. No. It's true. I mean. And then you'll get the guy that, so that's where preparation is important, right? You prep, right? So that you don't become that guy. And so that you also know how to deal with that guy, right? When it comes to competition, the way that I look at it is your best mindset is to be first and make them do or play the game that you want to play. If they are, like Nsima was saying, super physical and just trying to throw you around, the sooner you, like if you're a guard puller, the sooner you can pull guard and put them in the guard that you want, the more control over the situation you're going to have from then on out. And the harder it's going to be for them.
Do you guys see that, like, especially at white belt, is there more guard pulling? Just, I'm assuming because in my opinion, because I'm just trying to survive. So I'm usually the guy that's on the bottom trying to get them back in my guard. And
no, I would say, as somebody that refereed for a while, I see guard pulling, there's more of a correlation to size than there is to skill level.
Heavier guys never pull guard.
Right. But I mean, if you think about it, heavier guys in class don't have to pull guard.
Exactly.
Because all their training partners are smaller than them, so they can just shove them over.
Bad
right?
habit, though.
Oh, it is. And I hated refereeing the heavyweights, white belts, because they didn't know how to do a takedown, and they were used to muscling people down. And when their opponent didn't fall, they didn't know how to play off the bottom, so they didn't pull guard. So I ended up refereeing a lot of matches where guys shoved each other around the mat and nobody scored any points. And then as the referee, it's the referee's decision, and I have to pick one of these guys.
Oh, no. Like they're both horrible.
Right? I posted something online, and I must have said it before because, like, I guess I must have said it during one of my kids' classes back in the day, because I posted something online, a video of me teaching, and then someone on it was on Reddit or something, came back like, I remember you used to teach our kids. I remember one time 2 kids were going against each other and neither one of them were really doing anything. And when the time ran out, they asked who won. And I said, and you told them they both lost.
You both lost.
Because neither one tried, right?
I just picture them with that South Park stare and there's a little eye blink. They like blink twice, like didn't understand.
It's not even a tie. You didn't even try.
That's incredible.
But that's one reason why Cassio doesn't let white belts roll with white belts. That's something that I've been to other schools, and it's not like it's a bad thing, but I don't see other schools do that. Like white belts do roll with white belts, and I guess sometimes they can be safe, but I can see why he doesn't, because a white belt rolling with a white belt, you're just learning each other's bad habits.
Well, I think also being at Cassio's is kind of a privilege to have such a high percentage of upper belts to train with.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Up until Cassio's, and even after I was training at Cassio's, when I'd visit other schools, it's like the ratio is opposite. It's like you have 80% white belts and like 20% colored belts. And then it's like, how are white belts not supposed to train together, right?
Yeah, I get it.
And so yes, I think there's a huge advantage to training with upper belts as a white belt. Now, the other end is it's like, oh, I never win. Well, yeah, it's not real. I think a lot of people think of it as winning and losing, but it's training, right? Yeah. I think you go to the competition for that.
That's one of the really cool things about, I guess, doing jiu-jitsu as an adult, because I remember, playing soccer as a kid and playing basketball as a kid, but I don't remember the beginning stages of that.
Oh, right.
Well. You know what I mean? Like, I remember when I got good and I was playing competitively and all that, like, okay, I understood the soccer language at that point, right?
Right.
But starting jiu-jitsu as a 23-year-old and being put back in a position where it's like, again, learning a new language where you're like you're a kid being toyed around by an adult. You're like a 260-pound child being toyed around by a 150-pound adult. Like, that was so mind-boggling to me at the time, because I haven't been put in a position physically where I truly had no way and no understanding of what the fuck to do.
You're like, no, I'm actually strong. And
I'm actually strong. I'm athletic. I'm strong. No,
but you're not.
Why he has his knee on my fucking belly.
That's your video with Nate?
Yeah, this is the video with Nate. And I think that's something that, as an adult, if you start jiu-jitsu as an adult, you shouldn't look at it as like, oh, I wish I started as a kid. It's another way to just teach yourself that it is good to learn new shit.
It is, and it's important. But I also find, and that's not just from jiu-jitsu, but from teaching swim lessons to adults, that adults overthink everything, and they can't have fun sometimes.
Yes.
They can't have fun. And that's the thing, like I had adult swim lessons where they're just like, look at these kids, they're learning how to swim so fast and whatnot. And I'm like, but those kids, there's no pressure on them.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the kids do, but most of them were just like in regular swim lessons, not in competitive swimming. There was no pressure on them. It was just like, you go to this class. There's a reward if they like pass the class. They get, whatever.
A lollipop.
Or the pollywog, I'm a pollywog. I'm an eel. I'm a shark or whatever. I get a certificate and all of that. And there's that reward for progression.
But we put that pressure on ourselves.
Right. Adults tend to do that a lot more often. And they, if in situations like it's crazy, and it's swim lessons, it's really obvious. Like I've helped people learn how to swim, some adults, and they're tense, they're scared. And it's amazing. All of a sudden, like there is a moment when they just let it go. And all of a sudden they're learning just shoots through the roof, through the roof. Once it's,
I think adults tend to compare themselves to other people. So if they're in a class or they're in something, they'll be like, oh, so-and-so was only coming for 3 weeks and they already know how to do this and that. And I'm not that good and I'll never learn, they continue to have a lot of negative self-talk. How do you work your way through that in jiu-jitsu, especially considering that, we're trying not to compare ourselves to other people because sometimes that can be dangerous. But sometimes it's also necessary. And if we're going to go against each other, then I do have to compare my skill against yours. And I need to learn more so I can figure out ways to, negate some of the skill that you have or try to get on par with you in some way.
I think that's less about trying to be better and winning and more about strategizing and figuring out, it's just puzzles. Jiu-jitsus are puzzles. And that's, I guess, why I've always loved it is it's like, it's a puzzle.
You're still continuing to focus on getting yourself better.
Right, absolutely.
Like I'm going to go and get my shit together and then I'll come back and try again.
But yeah, I don't look at it as beating the person. I'm looking at beating the situation. Right? As opposed to like trying to win against a person, it's like that person might have a great guard. I may not still beat him. But if I can figure that guard out, that's a puzzle, and that's a win. Whether
win.
That's a win. Whether I beat the guy or not, that's a step forward for me. And now the thing is we're both in flux. We're both learning, right? So the minute I start beating his guard, his game is upping too. So it's not like I can ever really catch up unless I train more.
Yeah.
Or, just keep going or, but, and some people are more talented, but I always try to tell my students, it's like, it doesn't matter how talented you are as long as you keep coming. I was never the least talented person, but I was never the most talented person of all the people that I trained with. The most talented people typically burnt themselves out though.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's when they're good at it, it's fun at first. I think there's a thing about having somewhere where you like seeing where you can go, right? When you start beating everybody pretty quick, it's fun for a little while, but after a while, it's like, where's the challenge anymore? I didn't start jiu-jitsu because I could beat everybody from the beginning, right? I kept doing jiu-jitsu because I kept getting beat, and I wanted to figure out the puzzles. I wanted to figure out how to, this is what keeps happening to me. How do I fix that? And then there's always another puzzle. There's always somewhere else to go. And so
I like what you said there about beating the situation. That's incredible. And then you can kind of like, maybe you get into particular situations with somebody and you just did better than last time. Yeah, that's a W. That's
absolutely.
That's a win. Whether you actually won the match or not is different story, but you can relate that to anything else in life. You can relate that to weights. I did that many times. I had one training partner that was way ahead of me on bench, and one training partner was way ahead of me on squats.
Right.
And my victory, my situational victory, was to be within 90 pounds of the guy that was beating me on the squats. And anytime I did that, when I got to 80 pounds or 70 pounds, I was like, I fucking won, even though I got my ass kicked.
Right. And in a way, if you're behind, you have more motivation than they do. Right.
That's another win. Yep.
Yeah. That's so I mean, so like they're, and that's the thing with jiu-jitsu is they're constantly growing too. So the minute I started beating this guy's guard that had a great guard, his guard's either getting better or he's learned to do something else based on beating my puzzle that, okay, he's beating my guard. Yeah. Now that's a puzzle for him to learn from.
For anyone that's new, like that's a way you should be gauging your progress as a white belt. It's not like, oh, I finally tapped this person. It's like, oh, wow, he only tapped me 2 times this round versus last time he tapped me 4. Or I actually managed to get out of I actually managed to escape that position from him. Right. That's a win.
I was going to say, a lot of people say, oh, I only got tapped so many times, but you never know what they are working on. So I don't like gauging my growth on how many times I get tapped or how many times they tap me.
Yeah.
I like gauging my growth based on the specific situations that I am working on. Like I think it's always good to have something in the back of your mind. And sometimes the situation never arises, right? Like I want to get good at cross chokes. There's rounds where I never get in the position I need to be in to work on my cross choke, but it's always in the back of my mind. Like if I am in this situation, what do I need to do to get this working?
Yeah.
Right. That might, so I have my personal puzzles too, right? For everybody. But, then there's individuals that are good at things and you learn to puzzle out what they're doing and how to work through that.
What about some of your expectations for practice that you might have where you're going against certain individuals? Have those things ever worked out really well in your favor where you thought a certain way and it was that you were able to actually kind of make it go that way, or has it been kind of quite the opposite? Like if you think about your expectations too much of how you're going to perform against somebody.
I think it depends on how you're training at the time. I think there's 2 ways to train. I think one of them is you're working on what you want to work on, no matter who you're training with. And sometimes you're working on like the puzzles, like on a specific person, right? And in general, like if you're training to compete, you should be working on your thing. You shouldn't worry at all about what other people are doing. You should try to control the situation from the beginning. And if you lose control, try to find a way back to control. If you're learning to just kind of grow, then that's when it's like playing with other people's strengths is fun and rewarding, right? But you don't want to play into their strengths if you're trying to create a mindset to compete, right? But if you're just in your growth mindset, when you're not having any competitions coming up and you just want to grow, working into somebody else's strength is a wonderful way of losing and learning and trying to figure out a new puzzle to deal with.
Yeah.
Oh, which match is this?
It's one of your fights.
Yeah, no, that's a Submission Pro Tour, I think.
Have you ever, like before any of your competition matches, is there ever, how do you generally feel when you're preparing?
Oh.
And even right before the match?
Preparation wise, I'm not as serious as Cassio probably wants me to be most of the time. I do try to work as hard and for like my last few of them, I'm starting to get into a better mindset of like training, and then I hurt my knee and I haven't competed in a while, but yeah, no, mindset wise, I'm very, since I'm still teaching class, I still have to help people. But when it comes time for me to roll, I'm not focusing on them anymore. If I'm sitting out and watching them, I will help them. But like, I think if I'm training to compete, it's about, again, like I was saying, trying to play the game that I want to play during my competition, right?
Yeah.
I want to pull guard. I want to do this. I want to get a sweep. I want to attack this way. If I get on top, I want to maintain control. And I'm doing that to my training partners. And it's probably not as much fun to train with somebody training for competition as it is just to train on a regular basis. And then when it comes time to the competition, when I'm there, I just try to warm my body up a little bit. And just try to stay calm. I think the waiting part is the most nerve-wracking to me. Once you're out on the mat, the The other thing I try to do is I think, I try to look at it as almost like training in class. Like
Yes.
when I'm out there, I try to have fun because all the hard work should have been done previous.
Mm-hmm. You
And
can't
so-
add pressure onto yourself. While,
Right.
Like if you're looking at a competition like it's something different, then you're going to roll differently.
Right.
And it might not be you're rolling in a natural way where you're letting yourself do what your body knows how to do.
Right.
But now you're thinking like, oh God, if I lose, and then you just don't do your thing.
Yeah.
You know?
And I've been there, right? I mean, I wasn't always good at preparing and competing. It was just like, it's just like, oh, I'm out here and I'm reacting to him rather than just do jujitsu.
Yeah.
I train it all the time. Why am I not doing it when I'm out here? Why is it all of a sudden a fight?
What are some things that have been helpful for jiu-jitsu? Have you noticed a change if you made some changes to your diet? Have you noticed changes if you work on lifting or running? Have you noticed anything in particular that made a big difference for you?
So for me, I think the best prep that I had always done for jiu-jitsu when I was back when I was lifeguarding, and I haven't had the access, was swimming. I loved swimming. I used to do like rounds where I'd just swim. I'd sprint a lap, get out, do push-ups, and sprint a lap, get out, do squats, and just like kill your body that way. And I think
Body weight exercises, basically, yeah.
Yeah, or like push out of the pool, like almost like pool dips type thing. Yeah, push outs and things like that. I used to do that a lot when I had access to the pool more. It was part of my job and it was easy.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the best for jiu-jitsu. I think also just the rhythmic breathing that comes with swimming is more similar to when people are putting pressure on you. Than most other other kinds of.
It'd be
cardio
hard to not
workout.
have your breathing be erratic, especially. I hear some of the guys talk about feeling like suffocated.
Oh,
and
yeah. Claustrophobic. Yeah.
Yeah, the claustrophobia. That's got to be tough.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
Have you gotten into lifting?
I didn't do that much of it. No, mostly body weight, swimming, and training. Yeah.
What about nowadays? Have you considered doing a little bit of strength training for a while to see what it might do on the mats?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I wouldn't mind doing it. In fact, I mean, before Cassio moved and the weights were in the back, I was like, oh, I'm just going to start, doing that. But, But of course, then family life is getting crazier too. And so it's like, okay, well, and like I was telling Andrew lately, it's like, okay, I do want to get into other things, but right now my focus is I haven't been going to other people's classes enough. So for me, that's going to take priority. And then once I can get in a rhythm there, then add more, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
You know what's kind of cool about, and there's obviously going to be all this bias towards jiu-jitsu since we do jiu-jitsu, but boxing is an effective martial art, and it's good to learn how to strike. Like Mark, you're gonna be showing me ways that I can use the heavy bag for exercise, right? So I do that stuff correctly. But if someone were to start boxing, it'd be a real far out goal to be like, I'm going to do a boxing match.
Right.
Like you don't just find a boxing tournament and do a match because that's like, there are punches to the face. Like that is a different type of thing.
You lose, you get knocked out, most likely.
You lose, you get knocked out. And when you're training, you can't spar at 100%. That's just not a safe thing to do.
No.
But jiu-jitsu, not only is it an extremely effective martial art for the street or for actually learn fighting, but then if you're just somebody who's been doing it for a few years and you've been going a few times a week, you can actually go find a tournament, train more, find a tournament and go compete with people and come out of it not getting hurt, like not actually being hurt because of the nature of the martial art.
Yeah, there's not many sports. I mean, I know there's rec leagues and stuff like that for like baseball and soccer and basketball and all that, but like, I don't know. You don't have like, the thing about jiu-jitsu too is it's almost like a step above those rec leagues because you got audience there watching, you got people up in the stands, you're out in the mat in front of everybody. There's other, and so it becomes, it becomes something a little bit more. I've always thought though that it would be cool to have a more rec league. Like we compete every Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Kind of for the everyday person because it takes a lot to prep and get ready for the kind of tournament that we have in jiu-jitsu, which is awesome. I like that there's that level, but I almost think that it would be really cool to have like a
Sunday rec league.
Yeah.
Like a jiu-jitsu club.
Right. Because there's a lot of guys that, most tournaments we have to travel, you have to do all this stuff. You got to get a hotel, you got to pay to enter, if you had something that was local, that was just kind of a rec league thing that you did like every Saturday or every other Saturday for a couple of months or, that would be,
And that's something that actually could be organized by the community.
Yes.
Especially since, I wonder, since there are so many schools in an area, like so many schools in Sacramento, so many schools in other cities, like that could be something that is done if everybody's cool enough with each other to plan and do that.
And that can be a problem because there's a lot of politics in jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
People also might get a little too hyped. Right? And want to beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, but that happens in all the rec leagues. I used to work Parks and Rec basketball. Parks and Rec basketball.
Oh yeah, basketball gets real serious real quick.
Dog, I think I told you I went out to play some outdoor soccer back in 2021 or something. Some guy invited me out. It's been years. I go out there. These people are kind of going kind of hard. A guy ends up getting taken in an ambulance because someone slide tackled him and he hit his head on the fucking turf. People get a little bit too crazy sometimes.
Absolutely.
I remember I fouled somebody really hard.
Oh no!
And then the guy started yelling. He's like, "I'm gonna go pop my trunk. I'm like, I was about to say something. My friend's like, he means he's gonna get a fucking gun. I was about to say, I don't give a fuck about your trunk. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Like, what are you gonna get? A spare tire?
I was like, dude, we're cool. We're good, man. I didn't mean to hit you that hard. It's like, man, over a rec league basketball.
But in general, I mean, like even on the bigger stage, like I think the jiu-jitsu people.
Oh, did he go out
to sleep?
Yeah.
Oh, see, you had a tap.
Well, it was.
Oh, it must have just been a.
Are you on a stage in this match that you're in?
That was
that's kind of neat.
A couple of the guys from Aries Jiu-Jitsu put on this one, and I don't know if they've done one in a while, but it was
there he goes.
Yeah.
It was like a fight to win style tournament, except with EBI rules with the overtime rules. So that was in the overtime.
Yeah,
I got to start on his back, and
And that was that.
That was that. Yeah.
What's your guys' thoughts on no-gi getting really popular lately?
I love it. I haven't been watching as much as I would like to. I need to subscribe to Flow Grappling or find somebody to watch with. But to me, it's all jiu-jitsu. I come from the and a lot of people now are like, oh, no-gi and gi, they're two different sports now. Kinda. But they're all jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started, no-gi was we took our top off and we just rolled without a shirt. That's how it was, right?
Yeah.
Then we talk about women coming into the sport. There was a reason why women were coming to the jiu-jitsu schools back then. Like a bunch of old sweaty guys taking off.
Yeah.
How do we get more women involved in jiu-jitsu, do you think? Are we seeing more or
yes, definitely. Nsima and I were just talking about that. It's all about the, in my opinion, it's about the culture of your school. I think, and if anybody's looking for a jiu-jitsu school, take note of how many women are on the mat. If there's a number of women on the mat, you are probably at a good school. Because they're not going to put up with as much shit as some of us do, right? And so I think, hygiene, clean mats, wearing.
That's a big fucking deal, no matter what. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
Dirty fucking schools,
oh,
man.
no, trust me, I have too. I used to always wear white gis, and I'd come out of some schools and I'd be like, oh, man.
Oh, there's some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, but
and everyone gets that, right? Everyone gets some of that shit, like ringworm and
I never have, and I am proud of that shit.
So I used to get ringworm all the time. And Cassio has always been clean.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's even more clean since the pandemic, but he has always been clean. I think it comes back to the fact that I was in the swimming pool teaching swim lessons all the time, and the chlorine stripped my microbiome.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
And I used to get it all the time. And since I've stopped teaching swim lessons, I don't think I've got it.
Wow. That's wild. I didn't expect that.
It's tough to keep everything clean all the time. I mean, it takes a lot, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and then you got to remember that, like, you know, the ringworm is just a fungus, so that it can be on anything. I mean, it can be skin to skin, it could be skin to mat. I mean, to get it is just a matter of
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
It's kind of a bad luck situation.
Yeah. And I mean, of all the things, at least staph is way worse. If I get ringworm, I can stay off the mats and put, Lamisil or whatever on it, and it goes away. But it's some of the other stuff.
But you were mentioning if like, let's say a woman's wanting to start jiu-jitsu, because there's a lot of people in our audience, like since Andrew started jiu-jitsu,
right,
we've been talking about it more. A lot of people want to get involved. What should a women take into account when they're finding a school? Because like that, it's harder for a woman to go into jiu-jitsu school than a guy, just because in most schools you're not like, it's going to be a majority guys, if not some places, like maybe in the Midwest, it's only guys, right?
Right.
Sometimes.
Right. So I think there almost has to be like an inviting entry point. So like some schools have women only classes that the women can start with. Yeah. And then they can learn, I mean, you don't know until you've been at a school long enough to like, what is the culture like? What is it like to train here? So they can train in a women's only class and then transition into the larger class if they choose to, or stay. It gives them a lot of options that way. I think teaching kids, I've seen a number of parents start to join. Yeah.
With their kids?
Yeah. Well, they're sitting in there watching jiu-jitsu and they're getting to know the people at the school. I think that's going to be, it's a interpersonal thing, right? The women are going to go a place where they feel comfortable, and they're going to feel comfortable when people make them comfortable. And I think, I think you got to find a way to do that. And I don't really have the answers. I think that there's lots of possible ways and we should be trying, right? You know, to make it as open and as easy as possible. And be able to let them control the scale and what they.
Yeah. Andrew and I were talking about this a little bit ago, but jiu-jitsu is very interesting in the fact that, number one, it's grappling, right? So you're grappling one-on-one with another human being. But I've played sports all my life, and I have never been in a sport where I've been that close with a woman. Right. Because like I played soccer with girls and boys. I played basketball with girls and boys. Like I've done all these different sports, rec leagues or whatever. And like it cannot be denied that as a woman and as a man, it is very odd to be grappling
absolutely
that close with one another. Right. So it's a very different sport in that sense.
Yeah.
So
well, and then that comes to the other part. It's not just the school, but it's going to be the entire culture. So, like, are all of the students clean? Are they? I talked about taking off the gi top and going shirtless. I used to not wear a rash guard underneath the gi. I think that is a turnoff to a lot of women, right? Having a hairy chest on top of their face of some guy they don't know. Yeah. Right? so that kind of thing, and that's going to come from and basic the attitude and how you train, and are they getting beat up on? Are they? But on the other end, are you taking it too easy on them, right? You have to find a balance, and that's going to come from teaching your students to treat, to train in a certain way with everybody.
Yeah, it's true.
Who are some of your favorite people to watch jiu-jitsu wise? Because it sounds like you've studied jiu-jitsu for a long time.
Yeah, I did, and we were talking about this. I haven't been watching the latest generation. I'm like, oh man, I'm still stuck back in the mid 2000s when I used to watch all the time.
Glory days.
Yeah, Hodger
Who
Gracie.
are some of your favorites? Okay.
Yeah, Hodger Gracie and Braulio Nsima were like, they were longer, lankier guys, and so they were the guys that I was like watching. I'm like, oh, I want to be like that, right? So those guys were always good. I always loved watching Marcelo Garcia, even though he's built completely different than me. Yeah. But I mean, he's one of the legends. Teddy back in the day was one of the best. Yeah. I always say
Cassio compete against him?
Yeah, Cassio compete. So I always say I think Cassio, he won the worlds at adult once. Yeah. But his peak was in the era of, so he won it at medium heavy, but I think he was more of a middleweight, right? Yeah. And his peak of competition was right in the crossover of not just two of the best middleweights of all time, but two of the best jiu-jitsu guys of all time were both middleweights in his era. Teddy was the king of the middleweight division, and then Marcelo Garcia became the king, and Cassio's peak was when they overlapped.
Yeah.
When they were Cassio competed against both of them.
That's sick.
Right? And so I think if it wasn't for those two, probably Cassio would have been a multiple-time world champion. That's my opinion. But yeah, I think you know, and I mean, I've competed against high-level guys. I fought back at an old Gracie tournament. I fought a guy named Gabriel Vela, who was a 3-time ultra heavyweight world champion. It was a submission only, and I went 20 minutes before he tapped me.
Wow.
I think it was 20 minutes, but yeah, I had a long match.
Yeah.
And he caught me, but it was like, I remember thinking, this guy is ultra heavyweight, and he doesn't feel half as heavy as Cassio sometimes feels on me.
Mm-hmm.
Cassio has like this pressure like you wouldn't believe for his size. And, you know, he's smaller now, but like you're talking about back in the day when he was like competing at adult, you know, he was probably walking around at, you know, mid 190s, 200 pounds, and then cutting down to before, you know, losing a little bit of weight before. And no, but even
that wasn't even when
that,
he was that.
that
he was bigger than that.
Yeah, he was even bigger than that. It's harder to find those pictures, but yeah,
it's fucking biceps, bro. Like,
yeah, it's hard to find anything that's like of like, you know, more than like 2 megapixels.
Right? No, for sure. But yeah, no, Cassio was, and so the Teddy and Marcelo Garcia both at the same time, and he fought both of them. I think there was 2004, I believe. He went to the Worlds in 2004, and he ended up losing against Marcelo Garcia in the finals of the middleweight. That was the first year Marcelo won gold at black belt,
and he got silver in that one.
And Cassio got silver. He was the guy that Cassio fought in the finals.
Damn, that's sick.
But I think it was even a week before that he fought Teddy. Okay, so just to give you
Terere.
Yeah, just to give you an idea of like how crazy Teddy was, how good he was. Like he fought Cassio at middleweight, and Cassio lost in the finals against Teddy the week before, and then lost in the finals against Marcelo the next week. Teddy did enter the Worlds that year, but he entered. He kept hearing about this heavyweight that everyone was saying is the next greatest jiu-jitsu guy, and so he entered the ultra heavy division. So he was middleweight the week before, and he's a skinny guy. He's a real skinny middleweight.
Yeah.
And he entered the ultra heavy. Wow. Teddy ended up taking silver in the Worlds that year and lost to Fabricio Verdun.
Oh shit!
In the finals of the ultra heavyweight division. Not the absolute, but the ultra heavyweight division. All big guys.
Do they still let people do that? I think Mikey Musumeci, did he do that a few years ago?
I think you can always, as long as you are below the weight class that you sign up for when you weigh in, you're fine.
That's awesome. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, Teddy's a legend. He had some mental breakdown issues. And so he kind of disappeared from the sport. But
Power Project family, quality sleep can make everything with your health and fitness easier, which is why we've partnered with Hostage Tape. Now, we've been talking about mouth tape for years and nasal breathing for years. But one of the problems that we've had with tape is we all like to rock facial hair, and a lot of the mouth tapes we would use would fall off of our face at night. Hostage Tape doesn't fall off your face if you have a beard or if you're not a man and you don't. I'm joking. You don't need a beard, right? But either way, Hostage Tape makes sense. It'll stick to your face when you're asleep. You'll have better quality sleep because you're breathing through your nose all night long. It is a no-brainer. And if you head to hostagetape.com/Power Project, you'll be able to get the Power Project annual deal, which is a year's supply of Hostage Tape for 55 cents a day. You'll be saving $150 on the typical yearly deal. You're going to get 2 free tins and a blindfold. It's a no-brainer. So head there right now and get yourself some Hostage Tape. Links in the description along with the podcast show notes. Shut your fucking mouth when you sleep. Enjoy the show. I'm curious about your insight on this, Toby, because number one, you are an ultra heavyweight. But the one thing that I notice and has been mentioned about, and I know a few people who are in this boat right now who are white belts, but if you come into jiu-jitsu and you're heavier than everybody else and maybe you're stronger than everybody else, it doesn't surprise me that like you kind of see most people's techniques fall down and get worse the heavier they are. Because it seems that they're able to get away with a lot of things that the lighter individuals don't get away with. So these lighter individuals develop such amazing technique.
They have
to. They have to. But these heavier guys, it's like they can't get past the barrier of using their natural talent. So how should a heavy, strong person, because there's a lot that are getting into jiu-jitsu now, how can they progress at jiu-jitsu and be technical?
It's hard. I was just listening to your interview with Cassio, and he was talking about how Haley's like, oh, the big strong guys and the smart guys. Yeah. But it's hard. But you got to remember that the little guys have challenges and the big guys have challenges. The big guys challenge is exactly that, is that you get away with using lesser technique because you can make up for the lack of technique with muscle and strength and size. The little guys have to make up for their lack of strength and size with technique. Okay, but they're also more likely to accidentally get injured. And so they have to be very careful. And so for the big guys, if you, knowing that you have to make up for the fact that, you can get away with stuff. I always say that a lot of jiu-jitsu is about technique, is about training your body. It's like programming, right?
Yeah.
And you program through repetition. Okay. If you are only getting your repetition through training with other people that are smaller than you, that you can muscle, you are programming your body to do it with bad technique. And so you have to be very conscious and possibly drill and make sure that you have somebody that can look at your technique and say, you're doing this wrong. You need to fix this so that you don't do repetition. Is that,
This is actually, so Mason Fowler from Kyle Terra, he had this one match against this ultra heavy at Europeans, and this guy was ahead until like the last 15 seconds of the match, and then he managed to sweep him and win. But it was fucking crazy. But what you were saying about ultra heavies?
Yeah, so I think that what you have to do is you have to actually drill, because if you're always fighting, and it's hard to get out of that. If you can get out of that mind space for sparring, and you can do it with being relaxed and not using muscle, that's great. But that is not easy to do. Okay, and so, in order to get better technique, you have to rep good technique. And so you're going to probably have to drill more with somebody else, like an external source, to be like, you're doing that wrong.
Yeah.
That's not good technique. Rep it like this. Fix that. Do it more. And I think that if you want to be technical, you're going to have to find a way to do that where you're not trying to win.
And learn how to play guard.
Oh, absolutely. I tell big guys, so strategy-wise, when it comes to competition, we talked about that. Big guys don't know how to do takedowns because they're used to just shoving people down, and they're used to always being on top.
Yeah.
So when I try to prep someone big for their first tournament, I tell them, it's like, if you actually want to do jiu-jitsu and go to the mat, you're probably going to have to pull guard. Or you're just going to have to get really good at wrestling in the between now and the competition, which is less likely.
Just learn guard. Go ahead.
Yeah, but so it's if you want to go against a big guy and you want to play bottom, it's easy to get on bottom. It's not easy to get on top with another big guy.
Yeah.
This guy's supposedly like 400 plus pounds or something, right?
I wish I could let me see if I can find his actual weight. So yeah, there's an amazing picture on the internet of Mikey Musumeci.
Yeah, he's against that same guy. Yeah.
He's against this guy, where it was like Mikey's this 130 pound whatever.
Mikey's tiny. Yeah.
And then he beat this dude who's like maybe 380 or some shit.
So you can't wrap your feet together when you're in.
You cannot play close guard against him.
Yeah.
He's so wide that you can't play close guard against him.
It's incredible. I think incredible that he's that high level of an athlete, being that big. Like, that's tough. It's causing wreaking havoc on the other guys, but it's got to cost him a lot of energy to be out there. I mean, it's
there's Mikey versus him.
Jesus.
When I first showed my wife that picture, and she's just like, "Is that Photoshop?" I'm like, "It's not. Mikey's tiny."
Man, that's a big boy. So you've probably gone against 300 pounders and stuff like that.
So actually, I competed mostly at heavy.
Oh, okay.
I competed at the 208 weight class. 208 and then super heavy 220 were kind of the two that I competed the most at. But I've like I said, I've competed against, some big guys, and it's never fun. But it's all about, making them play the game. I'm a guard puller. So like I said, with big guys, it's always easy to end up on the bottom.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. Like when I went to Worlds as a blue belt, and I think one of my matches literally, or actually it was a white belt, which made me transition to playing guard. One of the matches, literally with the other ultra heavyweight, because I didn't have a guard, was just us going like this. One for a takedown.
Yep.
He took me down, we stand up and whatever. He won by an advantage. And I was like,
Right.
I came back and Cassio was like, hey, you should probably learn how to play a guard. Because no ultra heavyweights fucking play guard.
Right. And that's the thing. That's why I said it's especially early on, unless you get really good at takedowns. And we were saying earlier, like when it comes to guard pulling versus takedowns, you usually see it size-wise. And I think middleweight is about where it starts to flip, right? I think you see about maybe middleweights, or at least from my experience, can do either.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then once you start to get over middle, those guys like to go for takedowns. They like being on top. They're used to being on top when they train.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, the little guys are used to being put on the bottom all the time. So they like pulling guard.
guards.
And so you see double guard pulls against the smallest guys.
Yeah.
Both of them jump and pull guard on each other.
Andrew, go to like the last minute of this match, because that's when like it because you'll see Mason's like behind on points. All right, that's the end.
I figured.
There we go.
Here you go. So like this is actually really interesting. At this point, this guy
Mason's losing, right?
Mason's losing by 3 points and one advantage.
And one advantage.
And there's 50 seconds left. I think this is the semifinals match. So like he needs to pull out some fucking wild shit to be able to come out on top in this. Again, 40 seconds left. This guy's still playing on top, right?
Yeah.
But just wait, it gets really interesting. I thought he was going to lose this shit too. I really did.
What a weird match.
Yep, and you just
Ref, come on,
fuck out
ref.
of the way, ref. 19 seconds. Oh man, this shit was good. Yep.
And then, oh, well.
Okay,
Yep.
so he tries to go for footlock here, but you have that
You have to
fucking
get to the other side too.
that gargantuan foot. You ain't gonna lock that shit. 7 seconds. 6 seconds. Takes the back, gets the hooks in.
Nice.
And then because he got those hooks in at like 5
going
seconds.
out of bounds with the time running out, he gets the points for that. And he got the 2 points for the sweep they gave him too.
Mm-hmm. So now the ref is going to decide, and that they're actually going to end up giving him those points. But that's wild, dude.
That is crazy.
And what's interesting is the other guy, like, I don't know, did he give up? Like, I don't understand what's
He was
going on
definitely
there.
tired. So he saw the time running out. So he was like, oh, I don't really have to do much here. He was probably just tired and didn't think that, Mason would be able to actually
They were
manage
also on
that.
the edge of the mat. So he
That's
probably figured that, okay, even if they do something, it's not going to give him points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you train some kids as well. Like what ages?
I start the youngest 4, and one class is from 4 to about 7 or 8.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then the other class is 8 and up until they're old enough to go to or size-wise big enough to go to the adult class.
That must do a lot for some of the kids' confidence. And, they talk a lot in school about bullying and some of the things that are going on, even like cyberbullying. But this must give kids some good strength within themselves to feel better about themselves, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think just like any sport, right? Any sport where, I think all sports give them, confidence in themselves and teach them that they can, accomplish things, right? I think the advantage of jiu-jitsu is that it's also a martial art that they could actually use if they're being bullied. And I like jiu-jitsu for kids better than boxing or whatever, which they could also use, but I think jiu-jitsu is better in the sense that if like my daughter who's 8, there was a boy that was bothering her. It's like, well, I'm going to teach you how to do a takedown, get to mount and just hold him, right? And I know she could because she's been training with all the other kids in class, right?
Yeah.
And she's, and she's comfortable in those positions.
Mm-hmm.
She's comfortable to get to those positions, and she's had kids try to get away. So it's like, if she can get them to the mat or get, in this case, to the grass or wherever and get on top, she doesn't have to hit him. She doesn't have to do anything. That was one of the other things that when it comes to self-defense, I like jiu-jitsu a lot because if you really think about it, the situations where you're going to have to use that kind of force, a lot of times they're not even in a fight. You don't want your buddy to drive home drunk. You don't want to kickbox him, right? Take away his keys. If I can hold him down and take his keys, I like that. I like it's way easier to scale force with grappling. If I want to take someone down, get them out, and if I want to hit them, I can.
Yeah.
And I can choose not to as well. I can choose to hold them. I can choose to do, a number. My options are way greater than, if somebody's attacking me and just putting them on the ground. Right?
You literally, someone, you've been a bouncer too, but this is actually a very interesting thing because you don't have to go and take somebody down. You could slowly get up to them and literally just boom, and then transition to their back, and you just have the ability to be able to clench someone so that they cannot get away. Then if you need to slowly take them to the ground safely, you can.
So the interesting thing about sport jiu-jitsu and the rule set was it's originally designed to give points for positions in which you can do damage to your opponent and they have less likely to be able to do damage to you.
Yeah.
And in that sense, fighting to get to mount. If I can mount you, I can punch you, and you can't really, you could possibly punch me, but you can't do it with power from the ground on your back on the ground, right? Same thing with getting to their back. I can get there and I can choose to hurt you, or I can choose to hold you. I can choose to, put you unconscious. I can choose, a number of things. And it's very difficult for you to do anything to me when I'm there. You have to escape that position first. It's all about jiu-jitsu, when we're talking martial art wise, is about putting someone in a position where you can do damage and they can't. And that's basically what it is. And learning to control those positions gives you a lot of power in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I've seen it to the point where it's so powerful that in a street fight, you'll see people tap out now.
With MMA and stuff,
or the guy's like, I had enough, or the buddy steps in, he's like, this guy's going to break your arm. And he's like, okay, I'm good. Because the guy sometimes doesn't understand, you're in a hold and this guy makes one more move and your arm is done.
Right. Yeah. The difference between broken arm and not is a couple of inches.
Yeah, that one fight on the basketball court that I saw that was going around on Instagram for a little while. I think the one guy got the other guy in an ankle lock, and he just looked at the guy and said, I'm going to break your ankle. Shit. And the guy's like,
I don't remember this.
I think I heard it's a heel hook or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and the guy's just like, oh, okay. He still was mad, and he was still pissed at the guy, and I think he said F you or something afterwards.
I do remember.
Yeah.
They just got into a little scrap, and the guy's like, I'm going to break your ankle.
But that's where I like the scalability of force, right? With kickboxing, I can either knock you out or you're still dangerous. Yeah, I saw this one.
I've never seen this.
You haven't seen this one yet?
It's a short one.
Yeah, it's not very long. Again, recreational basketball. Far more violent than jiu-jitsu.
Oh, God.
But there's one that's definitely the more instigator. And then
half guard.
Going to the back. Looking for the choke. And again, controlling from a position where he can't strike back.
So the guy's buddy is verbally telling him, dude, he knows jiu-jitsu.
Dude, he knows jiu-jitsu.
And hey, the other guy's doing pretty good, right? For the guy doesn't know a lot of these moves, right? He's not doing bad. And now he's telling him, I'm going to break your ankle. You're done.
Bro.
And his buddy's like, dude, come on. You don't want your ankle shattered for life.
Right?
That's great.
And look, no one got hurt. They both got to get all their energy out, whatever they were arguing about. Interesting thing too was the guy that was maybe a little less aggressive, the guy in the green, could see his hands were open, where the other guy's hands were clenched.
Yes.
And that's something I remember, as a bouncer, you'd always look for, because I never wanted to see anybody fight. I always thought I was there to make sure a fight didn't happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Rather than being the guy that comes in just throws punches. We always had those guys too. You'd get everything calm, and then some idiot would come over and just plow into somebody, and you'd be like, "What are you doing? Everything was good. We were in a good spot."
Right.
Come over overly aggressive, wham, just tackle everybody. Like, ah, shit, here we go.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that's really interesting too for kids in jiu-jitsu, like I was someone who always played team sports.
Yes.
The only time maybe I was doing something on my own was maybe a fucking clarinet solo or some shit. Like it was always me and team. And although team sports are great for learning how to be like compete with other people and be in that setting with a group of people where you're camaraderie. You're never put under any singular pressure, like because there's always maybe somebody on the team that like if you're not doing well this game, like somebody else
can step in for you.
They can step in for you, or they can shot. Like there's always that
they can
leader
help you
aspect.
out. Yeah.
Exactly right. Whereas if it's something like tennis, if it's something like jiu-jitsu, if it's these one-on-one things, you go into a match or you go into a sparring session, and the pressure's on you to perform.
Yeah.
If you don't perform, you can't put that pressure on anybody else. You need to learn how to, like as a kid, I feel like it's such a strong thing to understand how to handle singular pressure.
Oh, sure.
And how to like if you're going to compete in jiu-jitsu as a kid, you need to be able to deal with the jitters that come with that. Because I know that I've never felt those type of jitters going into a soccer game with any of my teams.
You can almost like, there's certain members of the team that like, if they're not quite up to par yet, they can kind of hide.
Exactly.
They can hide.
Right?
You can't hide when you're the only one out there.
Exactly. And that's different. So I think it's a great thing to have a kid. If you want it, team sports are great, but also something where they can compete on their own.
Oh, sure.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Go head to head against somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no, it's harder to play the blame game. It's not this person's on the team's fault. It's not that person's on the team's fault. It's like, no, it's like you didn't prep enough or you were just beaten. Sometimes you prepped a lot.
Yeah.
And that just happens.
How do you
go ahead.
How do you advise parents on encouraging their kids to get into jiu-jitsu? I know you have kids and you coach kids, so maybe how can we encourage them? Because I want my son to do it. That's why I got into it initially. But what else could we be doing?
Just bring them to class, let them watch, let them meet the other kids. Honestly, jiu-jitsu is, even though like you were saying, it's a singular type sport. When you actually compete, it is still a social situation. And it comes back to what you were saying earlier when, about new people coming in and depending on how you look at them, you teach them to look at new kids coming in as teammates, as, it's even though when you compete, you're by yourself, when you train, it's a like family, it's a team, right?
The opportunity to get better.
Right.
More people.
And so the best way is they need to, make social connections. I think, I think for the adults too. I mean, like, I go to some schools and you don't feel that social connection, right? I think, and that's where we're really lucky at Cassio's. It's a really big family and super cool place to train. And there's those social connections. And so, my daughter right now is not that into jiu-jitsu. She did it for a while, but she still loves coming to jiu-jitsu, even though she's not training. She'll play they play with other kids, siblings of the kids that are on the mat and other, you create that social situation. You bring them, you let them watch. You don't put pressure on them. You ask them if they want to. The instructor tries to encourage them. I try to make a point that if I see a kid that's like their first time in and they're like nervous, or there are times when they come on the mat and then they freak out and they have to get off the mat.
Yeah.
I'm not going to force them out there, but at the same time, I will say like, how about you sit on the edge for a while? I mean, just proximity, keep them coming, have them show up. Don't force them to do it, but what about this? Look at this, or and then having kids in the class that can kind of take them under the wing and just introduce them to the social situation. Again, it's like I said, it's a social situation in training, even if you do compete individually.
Yeah.
How do you keep it fun, especially if they start to progress? I'm just thinking, like, I don't know, if my son gets like his first stripe, I might throw like a full-on party for that, right? But I also I don't want to overdo it to where he thinks like, oh, because I got this, I did a good job. And then if he doesn't get the second one, then he's like, I'm not doing a good job. This isn't fun anymore. How do you keep things fun?
No celebration until a black belt.
Yeah. That's
no birthday parties either. Until
And then you just don't even celebrate. You just say,
Yeah.
you did good. And that's it.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
hopefully I beat him to it, so I can kick his ass.
It's about maintaining their enthusiasm. I think rewards are great, and it's a big thing. Everyone talks about rewards for the kids and rewards for this, but honestly, it's about being like, that was super cool what you did in class today. Or, oh, look at, you're getting so much closer to, we go back to those situational puzzles. It's like not beating the other kid, but, oh, they did that to you and this time it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You can help remind them of their little victories as well. I think that that's going to be a big thing as well. And then, kids do like rewards. Full-on parties, maybe not necessarily for jiu-jitsu, but, oh, wow, you did such a great day, good job today. You helped the other kids. Like, I encourage, that kind of behavior. Let's celebrate that rather than stripes.
And have some videos of daddy getting beat up as a white belt. Because like when Aurelius starts, like, he'll get beat up and then you'll be like, hey, let's put in this DVD.
Damn, DVD.
But, and then the other thing is with kids is every kid is different. Like, it was crazy. Like Noah had been training for a while before he'd had his first competition. And he was off and on and he liked jiu-jitsu, but he didn't really.
Noah's Cassio's son.
Yeah, Cassio's son, Noah. But he didn't stick with it. He would take breaks and then come back. And then it was like, I was saying that some of my kids in my kids' class were interested in competition. And so there was one that I picked out. I'm like, it's local. I'll have some of them do that. Mm-hmm. And I made a point to invite everyone to come watch. And Noah went and watched, and he got so excited. Mm-hmm. I think just seeing the other kids and just, and he hasn't stopped since then.
He got the bug.
Yeah.
He's done so many competitions
No,
since.
I know.
Jesus Christ. I feel like he's competing every weekend.
He just competed on Saturday in Stockton. Like it was a super fight, like a kids fight to win type thing.
It was a super fight. Yeah.
I was like, dang. And it was like, he just needed to see that. So like for him, he's excited about the competition. He's excited about training. And now he's coming to, from what I understand, classes with Cassio and meeting up with other kids and, practicing everything and watching videos all the time. Mm-hmm. But other kids, that won't be the motivation, right? So you almost have to find what motivates them. For my daughter, it's the social aspect. She loves the other kids in the class. She loves just being there. And I think that's a big thing for all of them. But that's, and so right now I'm not forcing her to come in, or to train, but she's still coming to every kid's class. And those are her friends. If they keep training jiu-jitsu, eventually she'll probably be back in, you know, and that's going to be a big part of it. My youngest, he's 4, he's going to be 5. He was the opposite. Well, he liked to put on the gi, and then before class, he'd come on the mat and they'd all play tag and run around and whatever. And then once I started class, he's like, I want to go play. And he'd take his gi off. But recently because he's been coming and he's been there every class and he sees his friends on the mat, he's like, I want to do jiu-jitsu. So more and more, he's starting to train.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so if you're training, bring them. Mm-hmm. Let them watch you. Bring them, early. If the kids' class if you can go at a time when there's a kids' class before your class, bring them early. Let them watch the kids train. Let them meet some of the kids. Let them try a class without any pressure to actually join. You just want to try the class today? Go ahead, step on the mat. Let's play.
How you liking smashing your feet over there during the podcast?
It's nice. Yeah.
I saw you actually using it and pushing into those spots on your feet. Andrew, you got anything else?
That's all I got right now.
All right, take us on out of here.
Ooh, caught me there. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Please drop those comments down below. We've asked you guys before if you guys are interested in jiu-jitsu. It would be cool to see if how many of you followed through and actually started. And if not, let us know what's that last blockage, so that we guys can get to rolling on the mats, because I'm telling you, it's freaking life-altering. I absolutely love it, and I don't plan on ever stopping. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe if you guys are not subscribed already. Follow the podcast at MB Power Project on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z, and powerproject.live for everything podcast related. Nsima.
Discord's down below at Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Toby, where can people find you?
Good luck finding me. You can find me on the mats at Cassio's.
There you go.
The other place I have a YouTube channel. I don't have a lot of videos up yet. I've been recording my classes, but they're not listed. So you can, if you send me a message on there or whatever, I might be willing to send you the links. Anyway, other than that, my YouTube channel would be Flow Time BJJ or Flow Time.
What's Cassio's Instagram or the
Cassio
gyms.
Werneck Jiu Jitsu.
There you go. I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.